Listen carefully, this message is not for everyone. It found you for a reason. Lately, people have been watching you, studying you, whispering about you. They can't figure it out. One moment you're quiet. The next moment you move with unshakable strength. One moment you're wounded. The next moment you rise like nothing could break you. And now they're asking a question they never expected to ask. How can one person carry all of that? They think there must be multiple versions of you, but they don't understand what I placed inside you. They saw the attacks. They saw the betrayals. They saw the doors that slammed in your face. What they didn't see was me standing behind you the whole time. You thought you were barely surviving, but heaven knows the truth. You weren't just enduring the battle. You were being prepared for something that ordinary people could never carry. And what is about to unfold will leave them speechless. You called it rejection, but I called it protection. I saw the nights when you questioned your worth. The moments when doors closed so suddenly, it felt like the ground disappeared beneath your feet. You stood there, confused, replaying every conversation, every effort, every sacrifice, wondering what you did wrong. You thought you failed, but you didn't understand what I was doing behind the scenes. There were rooms you desperately wanted to stay in, places you prayed would accept you, people you tried so hard to keep in your life. You believed if you just tried harder, gave more, endured more, maybe they would finally see your value. But I saw something you could not see. Those places were never built to carry what I placed inside you. Your calling was too heavy for their small expectations. Your future was too vast for the limits they tried to place on you. And if I had allowed you to stay there, they would have slowly convinced you to shrink, to quiet your voice, to abandon the very purpose I created you for. So I stepped in, not gently, not quietly. I removed you. I allowed the rejection. I allowed the misunderstandings. I allowed the distance. Not because you were unworthy, but because you were too important to stay where you were tolerated instead of honored. Every time a door slammed shut, you felt humiliated. You felt abandoned. You wondered why people you loved suddenly treated you like a stranger. But what felt like humiliation on earth was actually divine separation in heaven. I was pulling you away from environments that could not recognize your destiny. You were never meant to beg for a seat at tables that were too small for your purpose. You were never meant to chase approval from people who could only see your past, but were blind to your future. And while you were grieving those losses, something powerful was happening. You were being redirected. Your strength was growing. Your vision was sharpening. Your spirit was learning to depend on me instead of people. The rejection you cried over was actually clearing the path. Because where I am taking you, the weight of your calling will require strength that those old environments could never understand. One day you will look back at those closed doors and realize something that will shake you to your core. If they had accepted you, if they had welcomed you, if they had kept you comfortable, you might have stayed, and staying would have quietly buried the destiny I placed inside you. So do not mourn what left your life. Those rejections were not the end of your story. They were the moment I began separating you from limitations and moving you toward the life that was always meant for you. You thought the battles were random. You thought life was simply being unfair to you. But look closer. The pressure you felt, the sudden betrayals, The resistance that seemed to rise every time you tried to move forward. None of it was accidental. There was a reason the attacks came when you were about to grow. There was a reason the confusion appeared when you were close to clarity. There was a reason the opposition grew stronger the moment you started believing in the purpose inside you. What you were facing was not ordinary struggle. It was warfare over your calling. Long before you understood who you were becoming, the spiritual forces around you already knew there was something different about your life. They saw the strength forming inside your spirit. They saw the resilience you were developing. They saw the future I was preparing for you, and they tried to stop it before you ever recognized it yourself. That is why the battles felt so intense. Not everyone is fought the same way. Some people walk through life with small resistance because they carry small assignments. But the weight of your purpose drew attention long before you ever spoke about it. That's why doors closed at strange moments. That's why people suddenly turned against you. That's why confusion tried to cloud your mind when you were about to step forward. It was an attempt to exhaust you, to make you question yourself, to convince you that the struggle meant you were on the wrong path. But the truth is the opposite. The intensity of the battle revealed the importance of your destiny. If your calling were ordinary, the opposition would have been quiet. If your purpose was small, the attacks would have been weak. But the war around your life grew louder because what I placed inside you threatens darkness. There were nights when you felt surrounded, moments when you wondered why it seemed like every direction held resistance. You asked me why things felt harder for you than for others. And while you were asking those questions, something powerful was happening. You were being trained. Every battle strengthened your spirit. Every betrayal sharpened your discernment. Every hardship deepened your faith. What tried to break you was unknowingly building you. You were learning how to stand when everything around you shook. You were learning how to keep moving even when you didn't understand the fight. And now, look at yourself. You survived storms that once felt impossible. You endured attacks that should have stopped you. You are still here, and the reason you are still standing is simple. The warfare came because of the calling, but the calling came from me. And what I place on a life cannot be destroyed by the battles sent against it. The war you faced was never proof of your weakness. It was proof that your destiny is powerful enough to disturb the darkness. You remember the silence. The long seasons where the phone stopped ringing, where the invitations disappeared, where the people you once stood beside slowly drifted away until the room around you felt empty. You wondered what happened. You asked yourself why the world suddenly felt so distant. You watched others surrounded by laughter, connection, and celebration while you sat in quiet moments wondering if you had somehow been forgotten. You called it loneliness, but it was never abandonment. It was preparation. I needed you away from the noise, away from the expectations, away from the voices that would have tried to shape you into something smaller than what I created you to become. Because the destiny inside you could not be formed in crowded places. It had to grow in secret. You see, when people are constantly surrounded by approval, it becomes easy for them to lose themselves. They begin chasing validation instead of purpose. They start building their identity around what others expect rather than who they truly are. But you? I took you through seasons where there was no applause, no recognition, No crowd cheering you forward, just quiet. And in that quiet, something powerful was happening. You were discovering who you really are. You began hearing my voice more clearly than ever before. Without the noise of opinions around you, your spirit started to awaken. The questions you carried forced you to look deeper. The solitude pushed you to grow stronger from the inside. What felt empty was actually sacred ground. While others were distracted by constant attention, you were being refined in places no one could see. Your character was being shaped. Your faith was being strengthened. Your purpose was being sharpened. Those silent seasons built a foundation that applause could never create. There were nights when the isolation felt heavy. Moments when you wondered if anyone understood the journey you were walking. You questioned whether the distance from others meant something was wrong with you, but nothing was wrong with you. You were simply being set apart. Not everyone is called into that level of preparation. Some people spend their entire lives surrounded by noise, never realizing they missed the opportunity to truly grow. But you were invited into a deeper process. In those quiet places, I was teaching you how to stand without depending on approval. I was showing you how to walk forward, even when no one else understood the path you were on. And one day, when the time comes for you to step into what I prepared, the strength you built in isolation will become your greatest advantage. Because when people finally see what I am about to reveal through your life, they will wonder how you became so strong, so wise, so unshakable. They will not see the lonely nights. They will not see the silent battles. But you will know the truth. The isolation was never punishment. It was the hidden place where I prepared you for a destiny too powerful to be built in public. You remember the pain, not the kind people talk about casually, but the kind that sat heavy in your chest when the world went quiet. The kind that made you question everything you thought you understood about life, about people, even about yourself. There were moments when it felt like the weight was too much. Betrayals you never expected, losses that came without warning, disappointments that cut deeper than anyone around you could see. You asked the question so many times, why did this have to happen to me? You searched for meaning in the middle of the hurt. You tried to understand why your path seemed to carry storms that others never had to face. But listen carefully. The pain you survived was never meaningless. Every moment that tried to break you, every situation that forced you to endure more than you thought you could handle, was quietly shaping something powerful inside you. Strength, not the kind people pretend to have, not the kind that appears when life is easy, but the kind that is forged when a soul walks through fire and somehow continues moving forward. While others were living comfortable lives, you were being trained in ways they could not see. You were learning resilience. You were discovering how to stand when your heart felt shattered. You were learning how to breathe through moments that felt suffocating. You were developing a depth of understanding that only comes from surviving real battles. Pain carved wisdom into your spirit. It taught you to see through deception. It taught you to value truth. It taught you to recognize strength not by appearance, but by endurance. Many people will never understand this kind of strength because they never walked through the process that created it. They will see you stand firm in situations that would make others collapse, and they will wonder how you remain steady when everything around you feels uncertain. What they will not see are the moments when you were tested, The nights you cried in silence. The days you carried your wounds while still showing up for life. The seasons where you felt broken but refused to give up. Those moments were not wasted. Each hardship added another layer to your spirit. Each challenge refined your perspective. Each painful experience removed illusions and replaced them with clarity. You are not the same person you were before those storms. You are deeper now, stronger now, more aware of who you truly are. And that strength will serve a purpose greater than you can currently see. Because the destiny ahead of you will require someone who understands struggle, someone who knows how to stand in difficult moments, someone who carries a quiet power that cannot be shaken by pressure. That is who you are becoming. So do not look back at your pain and see it as pointless suffering. See it for what it truly was, the fire that shaped a strength so rare that only those who survive the deepest battles ever learn to carry it. You remember the silence, not just quiet moments, but entire seasons where it felt like nothing was moving. Prayers seemed to rise into the air and disappear without an answer. Days passed, weeks passed, sometimes even years, and you looked around wondering why everything felt still. You kept asking the same question in your heart. Why is nothing happening? You were ready, you were willing, you were waiting, but the doors stayed closed, the opportunities delayed. The progress you hoped for seemed frozen in place, and in those moments, the silence felt heavy. It made you wonder if you had been overlooked. It made you question if your efforts mattered. You watched others move ahead while your own journey seemed paused in a place no one else could understand. But listen carefully. The silence you walked through was never emptiness. It was alignment. While you were standing in what felt like stillness, heaven was moving pieces you could not yet see. Paths were being rearranged. Obstacles were being removed. People you had not met yet were being positioned in places that would one day cross your life. The quiet seasons were not wasted time. They were preparation happening beyond your vision. You see, there are moments when immediate answers would actually disrupt the bigger plan. There are blessings that require certain conditions to be in place before they can safely arrive in your life. If things had happened when you first asked, you might not have been ready. The people involved might not have been prepared. The environment might not have been strong enough to hold what was coming. So the silence remained, not because you were forgotten, but because the timing was still being arranged. During that waiting, something else was happening inside you as well. Your patience was growing. Your faith was being strengthened in ways that did not rely on visible results. You were learning to trust beyond what your eyes could confirm. Many people abandon their journey when the silence begins. They assume nothing is happening and they turn away before the breakthrough ever arrives. But you stayed, even when it felt quiet, even when answers seemed delayed, even when progress looked invisible. You kept walking forward, and because of that, the alignment continued. Behind every silent moment, something was shifting. Behind every unanswered prayer, movements were happening in places you could not reach or control. One day the silence will break. The doors that stayed closed will suddenly open. The connections that seemed impossible will appear. The path that once felt blocked will unfold in ways that make you realize something incredible. Nothing was random. Nothing was forgotten. Every quiet season was part of a greater arrangement, a careful preparation that required patience before it could be revealed. So do not mistake silence for absence. The stillness you endured was not the end of your story. It was the moment heaven was quietly aligning the future that was always meant to find you. They looked at your life and made their conclusions. They watched the setbacks, the closed doors, the seasons where everything around you seemed to fall apart. From the outside, it looked like your story had reached its end. Some of them said it quietly. Others said it openly. Maybe they just couldn't handle it. Maybe they were never meant to succeed. Maybe their time is over. You heard those whispers. You felt the weight of their doubt. There were moments when their words echoed in your own mind, making you question whether the journey had already reached its final chapter. But listen carefully. What they thought was the end was actually the turning point, because while people were measuring your life by what they could see, they had no idea what was being prepared beyond their vision. They saw the struggle, but they did not see the rebuilding. They saw the delay, but they did not see the preparation happening beneath the surface. You were being strengthened in silence. Your spirit was being sharpened through every challenge. The very seasons that convinced others you were finished were the same seasons that were building the foundation for what comes next. And now something is beginning to shift. The moment you have been walking toward, sometimes without even realizing it, is drawing closer. A breakthrough, not the small kind that simply fixes one problem, but the kind that changes direction. The kind that opens doors no one expected to open. The kind that suddenly reveals that the story everyone thought was over was only waiting for the right moment to continue. And when that moment arrives, the same people who assumed your journey had ended will be forced to look again. They will see strength where they expected weakness. They will see progress where they predicted collapse. They will see purpose where they once saw failure. The change will be so sudden, so undeniable, that it will leave them searching for explanations. How did this happen? What changed? But the truth is, the transformation did not happen overnight. It was built through every tear you shed, every battle you fought in silence, every time you chose to stand again when it would have been easier to walk away. Your breakthrough is not an accident. It is the result of endurance that refused to surrender. It is the moment when everything you survived begins to reveal its purpose. And when the doors open, when the progress becomes visible, when the next chapter begins to unfold, you will understand something powerful. The people who thought your story had ended were only watching one scene. They never saw the entire plan. But soon they will. And the breakthrough that rises in your life will make it clear to everyone who doubted you. You were never finished. You were only being prepared for the moment everything would change. There were moments you should not have survived. Moments when everything around you suggested the story was about to end. Situations that looked impossible to escape. Pressure that felt strong enough to break even the strongest spirit. And yet, you are still here. Think about that. There were plans formed against you. Words spoken that tried to tear down your confidence. Environments that tried to trap you in cycles of failure and despair. Some people even believed they had already watched your downfall happen. But something kept interrupting the outcome they expected. Doors closed before the damage could reach you. Opportunities appeared at the last moment. Strength rose inside you exactly when you thought you had nothing left. You may have called it luck. You may have called it coincidence. But it was never either of those things. It was protection. There has been a covering over your life that many people could not see or understand. A quiet force guiding you away from dangers you never even realized were there. There were paths you almost walked down that would have destroyed your peace. Relationships that looked promising but carried hidden harm. Situations that seemed attractive on the surface but would have slowly pulled you away from the destiny waiting ahead of you. And every time something like that tried to enter your life, something shifted. Plans fell apart unexpectedly. Connections disappeared suddenly. Circumstances changed in ways that frustrated you at the time. You didn't realize it then, but those interruptions were not setbacks. They were rescue. You were being guarded. Because the purpose placed inside you was never meant to be destroyed by the traps that surround ordinary journeys. Your path carries weight. Your life carries meaning far beyond the small moments you can currently see. And when a destiny carries that level of importance, protection follows it. That is why some storms passed over you instead of consuming you. That is why certain attacks failed even when they seemed powerful. You were never walking alone through those battles. There was always a shield around your life. Even during the seasons when you felt exposed, when you questioned whether anyone was watching over your journey, protection was still operating in ways you could not yet understand. Look back now. Think about the moments that almost ended everything. You survived them. Not because the struggles were weak, but because the calling on your life was stronger. And that truth carries a powerful message for the road ahead. If everything you already faced could not destroy you, then nothing that comes next will either. Your destiny was never fragile. It was designed to endure. The protection surrounding your life is not random. It is the evidence that your story is still unfolding, and that the purpose written over your life was always meant to rise beyond every attempt to stop it. Something begins to shift inside you when you finally look back and see the pattern. The doors that closed, the people who walked away, the battles that came out of nowhere. At the time, it felt like chaos. But now you're starting to see something deeper. None of it was random. Every moment that felt like loss was quietly redirecting you. Every painful goodbye was separating you from places that could not carry where you were meant to go. Every battle that tried to break your spirit was actually strengthening it. You thought you were being delayed, but you were being prepared. While you were fighting to survive, something unseen was standing between you and the things that could have destroyed your future. There were traps you never stepped into, situations that almost swallowed you but somehow fell apart before they could reach you. That wasn't chance. That was protection you could not see. And now, as you stand here after everything you've endured, something inside your spirit is waking up. The pain didn't bury you. It built you. Every tear carved deeper strength into your soul. Every lonely season sharpened your awareness. Every attack forced you to discover a resilience you never knew you possessed. You were being forged, prepared in ways that only struggle can create. Because the destiny waiting ahead of you could never be carried by the person you used to be. It required someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who understands what it means to walk through fire and still keep moving. That person is who you are becoming, and now the preparation is reaching its final moments. The things that once confused you are beginning to make sense. The pain that once felt endless is revealing its purpose. The strength inside you is rising in a way you can no longer ignore. This is the moment when destiny begins to activate. Everything you survived was leading here. The rejection, the silence, the battles, the isolation. They were not the end of your story. They were the training ground for the life you were always meant to step into. And the moment you fully realize that your pain had purpose, fear loses its power. Because you finally understand something that changes everything. You were never just surviving the storm. You were being prepared to become the storm. Stand up now, chosen one. Feel it in your bones, every tear, every trial. Every moment you thought you were alone, I was there. I never left. I never faltered. I have been with you, shaping your spirit, building your courage, preparing your heart for the glory that waits. The battles you survived were never in vain. The pain you endured was never wasted. Every setback, every closed door, every whisper of doubt, all of it was refining you, lifting you higher, igniting the power I placed within you. Now the world will see what I always knew: you are unstoppable. Your destiny cannot be stolen. Your purpose cannot be silenced. You were chosen for greatness. You were called for triumph. Rise with confidence. Step into the light. Walk boldly. Because the victory is already yours. The world is about to witness what heaven has prepared through you.